I've never seen anything like it before, and to attempt to hit the ball out of there is pure madness.
The winner of the gold medal and the champion golfer of the year is Cameron Smith.
This is the one that I've always wanted to win since I was a little kid. So it just feels pretty amazing to be able to get it done today.
It's amazing that it's my destiny to be the first Aussie to win. Just incredible.
Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Golf Australia Magazine's Playing from the Tips, the Amundi Evian Championship Preview Edition. That's right, with the engraving barely done on one major championship trophy, we are set for another major, this time in the women's game. I'm your host, Jimmy Emanuel, attempting to lead the journey of our so-called experts, previewing and tipping not just the women's major, but also the 3M Open on the PGA Tour and Senior Open Championship, a major for the over 50 crowd. Joining me on that journey is first our stalwart tipster, who's kind of like Rory McIlroy at the majors. He shows up every time, puts in work, but leaves fans disappointed he didn't do better. That is, of course, Rod Morri. Rod, welcome.
No, I mean, hopeless. Absolutely hopeless.
You, Rory?
No, he has more top tens than I do.
Yeah, absolutely he does.
His bad days are better than my bad days by some considerable margin.
And once again, we are down one Adrian Logue. And if anyone has cited him, please let us know. Rod's starting to become concerned. But to fill his place, we have a new so-called expert, one who Rod believes might be a little bit unwell based on the fact that he loves writing so much. That is, of course, PGA of Australia senior writer Tony Webeck. Tone, welcome to Playing from the Tips.
Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, the jet lag of a few late nights is starting to wear off, so hopefully I'll be somewhat sharpened and ready to go.
I said when I arrived at the studio, I'm tired, and Rod said, why would that be? What have you been doing for the last week? Anyway.
It just gets harder and harder every year. It wasn't easy 20 years ago, but the Open is a really hard watch once you get into your 50s, I've got to tell you.
Tell me, before we get into it, are you guys early to bed, set the alarm and watch the end of it, or do you get all the way through?
It changes every day. It depends on how many beers I have in the afternoon. So if I have a couple of beers, I'll lie down for a sleep on the couch, turn it on and wake up in the middle. But on last day, I'm generally all the way through.
Yeah, I'm of an age where I wake up at all given times of the night, regardless. I just wing it, go to bed. I'm bound to wake up before the coverage is over. Put the Open on, put the radio on next to the bed. Actually, I don't know if people listen. The radio app on the Open coverage is just sensational. It's on the app. It is absolutely sensational. It's a great way to experience the golf. So I tend to put that on when I go to bed. Then when I wake up, I go and turn the TV
on. I find it every year that I never get it right. I'll generally fall asleep with the final group going up 18.
Yeah. You can't change your sleeping pattern for 1 week of the year. You've got to train for it. These guys are doing it all year. That's what they do. You know?
I was all over the shop. I was having 10 a.m. naps and 2 p.m. catch up 20 minutes and then go to bed at 8:30, toss and turn for an hour and then wake up at 2. And, yeah, it's going to take a bit to recalibrate, I think.
Exactly. Anyway.
Before we do move forward, any other highlights apart from our sleeping patterns from the Open for anyone?
Look, I know there was a lot of talk about it and chatter. There's actually something really interesting to be explored here, I think, about personalities and who we want to win and all the hoo-ha about Brian Harman. Golf ultimately is not a popularity contest. It's who gets the ball in the hole in the least number of shots. And in that department, he striped them. Absolutely striped. It was an extraordinary performance. I mean, you've got this focus on personality and character and names and those things. I don't know what it is. I know it's always been around, and it's true in all sports, I think. But what an extraordinary golf performance he put on. And disproved a lot of what I've been saying for years and years that, you'll never see another Corey Pavin. Well, our generation's Corey Pavin just won the Open, so it might be the exception that proves the rule, but yeah.
Tone, highlight from last week?
More to Rod's point, it was sort of the most underwhelming runner-up finish in a major by an Aussie probably ever, because Jason was probably never going to win, but he just hung around, and I think it felt like that the whole week. Min Woo was up there for a bit. We had guys top 5, top 10, almost all tournament, but with no real prospect of winning. So it was a funny one in that regard. The weather didn't make it much fun to watch, even worse if you're out there walking around in it. But it was sort of because it was so clinical, we were expecting, I think, another Open meltdown or some kind of a switch in momentum, and it just never came.
I did like the two main Australians on the Sunday in the heavy rain. Cam Smith with a wet mullet. That's got to make you think about cutting your hair. And Jason Day going hatless. I love to see a hatless tour pro. So that was top tier.
Is there a penalty built into contracts for going hatless? Like, you're free to do it, but you're going to pay for it? I wonder.
Absolutely. There's got to be something.
You'd have to think, wouldn't you? Because they'll never take them off.
But hatless
What
tour
about
pro.
Tom Kim, who just switches it around every time he...
Yeah, well, because you don't want the dripping water off the brim when you're putting. It's simple.
Speaking of personalities, isn't he a personality? It's exciting to think he's going to be around the game for so long. He has got whatever it is. He's got it in spades and game too. Like,
hurt his ankle, had to have his trainer carry him to the score return. All good stuff.
Yeah, fabulous addition to the World Cup.
Speaking of last week, our tipsters weren't at their best in the rain, and after hitching their wagons to Rory and Cam as top Aussie, there was still 5 top 10s. That takes our tally to 130 against 17 winners so far this year. But the main focus for this week is the Evian Championship, the 4th women's major of the year, of course won by Minjee Lee 2 years ago, and then Canada's Brooke Henderson last year, held annually in just a little announcement warning coming, Evian-les-Bains.
No idea.
Yep, see, good. France, which you won't be surprised by the name of the sponsor and the location is where Evian Water comes from. The company, a huge supporter of women's golf that earned their major status for this event back in 2013. The tournament kind of a paid-for major, basically, at a very pretty location, but architecturally lacking golf course, I suppose many would say. But it's still a major and the players certainly treat us that way. Rod, the golf course?
Well, the golf course is one of the reasons that it hasn't sort of necessarily got that major feel. But 10 years in, is it getting there? Is it being accepted? I still think this is a bit debatable, but I do think that we've all kind of just been, not browbeaten, but it's kind of, this is a major, and that's that. You know, whether you like it or not, it is a major. It's, when it was announced, it was like, you just can't do that. And this really ties into that Chambly thing about the Players' Championship being the 5th major. They might just decide one day to start calling it that, and in 20 years' time. I think in 10 years' time, there'll be no question about this as a major. So,
yep.
Look, having said that,
I got a bit caught out a couple of weeks ago with I find the Champions Tour the same way. The Co-League Companies Championship.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a major now, and not realising it was the old...
The Mitsubishi Electric's is seniors major, isn't it?
The thing about the Seniors Tour is, let's be honest, you're talking about, it's not serious golf. It can't be because they're too old to play the world's best golf. They're great players of the past, and that's one of them. This is different. This is the best women players in the game. And they deserve the best courses, the best sponsors, all of the best stuff. And you don't quite get that at Evian. Now, nothing's perfect. We play some ordinary golf courses for men's majors as well. But this one, it feels like a bit like Mission Hills used to. It kind of lets down the tournament and its stature because the course isn't really up to it. There's no answer to that with Evian. That's where they're based. If they're going to play it, they're not going to sponsor a tournament called the Evian somewhere else.
No.
And that's a bit of a shame because it's, I think.
It raises an interesting question of how we classify a major. Is a major defined by where we play it, how much we play it for, or who plays it? And, they're all those questions, I guess, that... It's
just an unspoken agreement, isn't
it?
We all agree that the majors are.
But the majors have changed in men's golf, and they've become such big business that's why it's so important.
We need a committee.
Yep.
You always need a committee in golf. There needs to be a committee that dishes out major status, and that wouldn't be open to any sort of manipulation or corruption.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But that's the thing. You can't just create it. This one's sort of getting there, and it's a major in the players' eyes. It's one of the 5 that's nominated, so they all want to win it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I think that debate will continue. But in 10 years' time, I wonder whether it'll still be the case. You'll have a generation apart from anything else who've been grown up watching it, just accepting it's a major.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we almost define a major by is history.
Yeah.
So until you've created a history, you're right, Rod. In time, it will become major championship status, and we just call it a major now. And maybe that's a title it will earn in time.
Yeah, indeed. Fake it till you make it.
Well, to be fair,
that's harsh. But
the women's game's a bit more complex. With the Women's Open wasn't a major until not that long ago, so you it's a bit more,
the politics of
it is a bit more difficult.
As is the business and the finance.
Absolutely,
all of it is much more difficult running the LPGA than the PGA Tour in so many ways. Having said all that, the course itself, a bit reminiscent of my old home track up at Mangrove Mountain. The clue's in the title. This thing is built on the side of a hill, and it's not ideal land for golf, and the golf is tricky because of it. Lots of uneven lies. It's always had drainage problems. They moved it from September because a couple of times it just got washed out. I think the first year and the 5th year when it was a major with 54-hole events. Yeah. You can't have that. So they moved it to this time of year, which has sort of helped with the drainage problems. They've done a lot of course. In fairness, they've spent a huge amount of money on the course. It doesn't look anything like it looked in 1994 when they had the original Evian Masters. But look, it's tight on the front nine with trees. The caddies are going to earn their money this week, not only with the walk, which is going to be tough, but with the calculation of yardages, with uneven lies, uneven stances hitting up and down hills, and it's really going to be a hard week for them. What do you do? I mean, it's all the interest around this golf course tends to be the greens. Yep. The greens have got heaps of internal contour. Most of the greens are sitting up above the fairways, so it's a bit of a rinse and repeat type course, and the scoring is good. The players play there every year. It really doesn't suit some players. Lexi Thompson famously had a bit of a spit a couple of years ago. So look, they've got to play the golf course. It suits ball strikers, really good ball strikers. Minjee Lee is a great example, as is Brooke Henderson. Those who are not phased, whether the ball's above or below their feet, whether it's an up or downhill stance, they're the players who really come to the fore. And then you've got to putt decently. Obviously, if you hit into the wrong parts of these greens, you could feasibly three-putt third of the holes.
Absolutely.
Without batting an eyelid. So I suppose that makes it an interesting sort of golf test in some ways, but it's always a bit disappointing. For a tournament of this stature, this course just isn't really up to it, I don't think. Which is a shame.
Yeah, I agree. Couldn't with that.
Do we, to that, just to raise a counter argument, because that's what I like to do sometimes, does the list of past champions does the list of past champions add any credibility to it? Because it's a pretty
I think that's
good players win there.
Absolutely. I think that's its strongest part is the people who've won there, and generally the field. Like the golf course is what it is, and the whole argument about the tournament. But good players win that golf tournament, so that's its strongest kind of thing. I mean, since it became a major, it's kind of who's who of that year of women's golf. So
even before that, Kari Webb won it.
Yeah, Kari won it, and G.I. Shin won it, and Paula Creamer and stuff like that. So
the short answer is yes, Tony. And my counter to that argument is always, if you put the best players in any format of the game on any golf course, they'll produce exciting, interesting, entertaining golf. But that's not golf putting its best foot forward as a product. The best golf comes when you get the best players and put them on the best golf courses. So Bellerive, we talked about last week for that PGA Brooks Koepka one, was a fascinating competition, but the golf course just wasn't that interesting. It was nowhere near as interesting as Stenson and Mickelson in 2016 at Troon. Great golf course, two great players playing great. That's when golf's at its best, and golf should be putting its best foot forward as often as possible. You can play golf down the highway for enough money, and the world's best golfers would turn up if there's enough money. It's not going to make for the most interesting golf. You're going to have a good competition, but that's where I think the danger with all of us is we overlook the importance of golf courses as part of the competition. When you get that right, you get the best competitions, I think, and the best spectacle, the best product.
Do you think the general public care that much?
No.
And isn't that what we should be appealing to in these kind of events?
Yeah, interesting question. We might get you on another podcast to talk about that. There's a good hour of exploration about
absolutely
that kind of stuff. That's a big question.
I've got no kind of backup. I just like throwing things at people. But don't expect an hour of informed comment, because it was just be.
It's what hand grenades are for, mate. I saw you pull the pin with your teeth and then lob it over the top and ran the other way.
We've made mention of a couple of Australians in there in Minjee and Kari as past winners. Tone, can you tell us a little bit about the Australians in the Evian field?
Yeah, we've got 6 teeing it up this week. So obviously Minjee, who won 2 years ago, leads that charge. And then we've got Hannah Green, Grace Kim, Steph Kiriakou, Sarah Kemp, and Karis Davidson all teeing it up, as well as Lydia Ko representing the Kiwis. So a nice mix there of girls that are, I guess we could argue Minjee's not in the Minjee type of form we've become accustomed to, but I like the way that Steph and Grace are kind of moving into this phase of their careers, and this might be a week where, after a few good results from them the last few weeks, that they might establish themselves as a lead at this level as well.
And Sarah Kemp had a pretty good week last week at the teams event with Elena Sharp.
Elena Sharp, the Canadian,
and has played well here before. So Kemp is another one that's
a golden era for Australian women's golf. I mean,
just Australian golf in general, but women's golf for sure.
This many women play this well. We've had multiple women on the tour previously, but I don't feel like. We can point to most of these and say they're all chance of winning.
We got 2 major champions under 30.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not something we've had a lot of. And then, like Tony mentions, Grace and Steph, I've got big raps on both.
Yeah, me too.
And then
totally different players. Grace will perform every week.
Grace will show up every week. Steph will show up in weeks, and you go, "How do you get in this field?" And then the next week she'll brain them by 10.
Yeah,
so
exactly,
it's great. But
and let's not forget Gabby Ruffles, who's waiting in the wings.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, Gabby, who's going with a real traditional kind of level step up in professional golf, and is so impressive at major championships.
Yeah, very much so. Very much. She's got that attitude, hasn't she? She's just determined to get there. Just on Steph quickly, it just reminded me that not totally dissimilar in that uneven stances and hills and stuff as where Steph won at Bonneville as an amateur. No. And she ripped that apart. I was there for that tournament. My goodness.
Yep.
So, I mean, going against it, she didn't play in the New South Wales Women's Open at Dubbo, I don't think, which, as you know, is the barometer for all of my
That is the most important golf tournament to happen in Rod Morri's life.
I think she did go, didn't she? Wasn't that her professional debut?
She actually might have done. You're quite right. I was just trying to...
Tony's a fellow at one time Dubbo man. He was...
Mate, Dubbo Golf Club member from way back.
27 holes.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Who do we each think will be the top Aussie? Rod, I'll go to you first.
You have to lean towards Minjee Lee because she's class, pure class. And, you know, she's the pick of the Australian players and a former winner here. Not playing her best golf, as Tony said, but I kind of think she doesn't need to. So I'm just going to play it. So I'm going with Minjee.
Okay. Tone?
Minjee's putting at Pebble Beach worried me. And I think it's been a bit of a worry all season. So I'm just going to ride the hot hand and take Steph as the top Aussie, and just hopefully that aggressive sort of mindset she's taken since International Crown. I think she sort of found something within that. And last week, where she finished fourth at the Dana Open, it was a great result for her. So, I think Steph might step up this week.
She won't be afraid if she gets to the top either. She'll love it.
I'm going to be different to you blokes and go with Grace.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now, I reckon that tells you everything you need to know about the state of Australian women's golf, is that we've come up with three completely legitimate.
And no one's taken Hannah Green.
So
that's very good. All right.
In our faces when she wins it next week and refuses to talk to any of us ever again.
Outside the Aussies, there are plenty of contenders, obviously, the likes of Nelly Korda, Jin Young Ko, Lydia Ko. The three major winners from this year, Lilia Vu, Ronnie Yin, Alison Corpuz, and basically every top player you can think of. But given we've had three straight first-time major winners, I thought we'd touch on some of those that could join the group. Rose Zhang, who will be mentioned at every single major championship until she wins one. Leona Maguire, who keeps getting better and better with each one. Mm-hmm. France's own Celine Boutier, a bit of a under-the-cover one.
Also winner at Bonneville.
Yep.
I was there for that too.
Japan's Ayaka Fiore.
For away.
Yeah. Big Rod Morri fan right there.
A lot of steps for her to take this week. This is a big golf course for those small
legs. The LPGA
legs.
Tour's shortest player.
That's right.
And probably the most well-credentialed of all of them, Thailand's Attaya Titikum. So that's an interesting sort of a storyline to play out this week. So may as well get a winner from each of you, and we'll go to Tony first.
I'm going to throw in a different potential first-time major winner in and another hot hand in Lynn Grant.
Yeah.
I think if we're looking for a ball striker this week, it's hard to go past the Swede who was so impressive in winning that Dana Open.
Such a flusher.
A couple of weeks ago.
Such a flusher.
And in that kind of formula, a good golfer playing well, that's a really special combination. Good golfers contend when they don't play well, but she's playing well as well. So I was going to go with Lynn Grant as well, but I'm going to go with Attaya, who's had a good record here in the past. She has. Crucially, was the only one of those you've mentioned who played the Women's New South Wales Open at Dubbo.
Of course. That's it.
So that's the X factor.
You've got to look at that. You've got to look at that.
It's actually interesting for Attaya. That was a almost could have at the first major this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she dumped it in the water on 18 there, and I'm not sure she's quite recovered from that.
No.
We haven't seen the same Attaya Titikum then, and she kind of needs to step out of that. This would be a good place to do because she's played well here before. So
I'm going to go with Celine Boutier because a French winner in France, why not? I'm into it.
She's another one that sort of just bobs up and surprises, doesn't she? Every time she wins, you think, oh, that's right, she's a really good player.
Yeah, really good ball strike.
Yeah, she doesn't need it. She doesn't do anything incredible. She doesn't hit it super long or high or shape it. She just hits it on a string where she's looking all the time.
And
Vic Open champion as well.
Vic Open winner, that's right. Oh, yeah. Before we leave the Evian Championship, let's get an outsider from everyone this week. And I'm going to take the first dip and go with So-Yeon Yu. Top 10 last year, not really week in, week out contender anymore, but still a really good player. And I think this week kind of sets up pretty well for her. Rod?
I actually had Steph as my outsider, Steph Kiriakou. So
good. That's possible. Tony, an outside choice?
Does Maya Stark count as a
Yeah.
An outsider?
Yeah,
Yeah, at a
Even with the
major for
Swedes?
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
She's a super entertaining player. Love watching her play.
Yeah.
Just smashes it and then goes and follows it and finds it and smashes it again.
Yep, absolutely. Good choices, actually.
Yeah.
I like that.
Oh, look, this is
Who
this
needs
points to-
Logue?
Women's golf is super interesting and entertaining at the moment. There are so many really good players and good players to watch. They're not just shooting good scores; they're doing it in interesting ways. I mean,
And the end of the major season that's a couple of weeks away at the AIG Women's Open at Walton Heath is going to be one of the best tournaments of the year.
couldn't agree more.
Let's head back to America briefly and the PGA Tour. Rod, tell us a little bit about the 3M Open.
Well, it's in Minnesota.
Yep.
TPC Twin Cities. So
Absolutely.
TPC course, joint venture between Arnold Palmer and Tom Lehman. You won't be surprised to hear this looks like a very quintessentially PGA Tour sort of golf course because that's kind of what it's been built for. This used to host the Champions Tour, but they brought in the PGA Tour back in 2019. Hadn't played in Minnesota since 1969, the PGA Tour prior to that. That points to some of the bigger issues I think they're facing with the whole Live Golf League and whatnot. They kind of lost touch with their base and roots in many ways, the PGA Tour, within America. Forget about what they did to the rest of us outside America. So anyway, they've kind of cured that a little bit with this. It's a housing estate. It's obviously a successful one because every review that I read, even though it was only about 4 of them, mentioned the number of houses. So that tells you that the developer would be very pleased with how the TPC Twin Cities went. Also, lots and lots of water. The pictures tell you there's kind of bunkers everywhere, lots of sand. It's a real visual kind of a thing, white sand, green grass. Look, it's not a terrible golf course. It's a decent golf. It's not a bad golf course. It's what you'd expect. The scoring reflects it. The winning totals, 21 under, 19 under, 15 under, 17 under. I imagine they've done tweaks to the course in between. It's going to be that kind of week. Lots of birdies. The field is interesting in particular because Justin Thomas, I didn't realise quite what a slump he is in.
Oh, yeah.
It's disastrous. I mean, they had that score at the weekend. They went and had a look. He's down to like 24th in the world. And
He's struggling to make the FedEx Cup playoffs.
this is the point. He's 75th, and only the top 70 go through. There's this week and next week, and then you're into the playoffs. He's never missed the playoffs. For him to get to the Tour Championship from here would take some of it. That is a huge story this week that, Justin Thomas might not make the playoffs. So there's him. There's a few others around that sort of cut line as well. Adam Scott, who I'm not sure how concerned he'd be about that.
A lot less than Justin Thomas.
Very much so. Cam Davis, who you just expect would be one of those top 70 players easily. Shane Lowry's at 73rd. So, look, there's a bit to watch in that way. That's what this tournament, next week's tournament, is going to be about. This is about setting up those playoff events. And that'll be, to me, the most interesting. You're going to ask for a tip, I'm assuming.
Well, I'm going to get Tony to run us through the
course,
Aussies
the Australians,
because
he's a good story amongst all of that.
Because there's a great story amongst it this morning.
There absolutely is. Yeah, we've been bolstered with, what are we up to?
Bolstered? Been a long time since I was bolstered.
We're up to 5 Aussies, I think, in the field this week now, thanks to Daniel Gale Monday qualifying for the second year in a row at this event. So, and not only did that, shot a course record 60 and slam dunked an eagle on the final hole to do it.
Why wouldn't you?
Just the video of that is great. Hits the flag and they've got no idea where it's gone because it hit the flag up the stick too.
Oh, right, one of those.
And he's walked up and he's like, is it in? And there's people standing around going, I don't know. And he goes and checks the hole and he's like, yeah, it's in there. Had something like 28 on the back 9, I think. Yeah. Crazy good. Can go crazy low.
Yeah, he's that sort of player, and he showed that at the Australian Summit, which is gone. He had his head in the frame more often than not over those TPS events.
Cam Davis, the interesting one, I think, having sat at Royal Liverpool all day Thursday to see if he would get in as first alternate and just having it. And because of where they had the range, couldn't go and hit balls because it was too far away.
That's right.
So just had to sit around the putting green looking at his phone going, please, someone.
Hoping to get the call to go and play some terrible golf because you haven't hit a golf shot.
Because you haven't hit a golf
for a whole day.
Awful, brutal. But yes.
It is interesting because you mentioned Scotty, Rod, but he's not playing this week.
No, he's not playing.
Maybe, but he has qualified, I'm pretty sure, for every... Isn't he and Justin Rose the only two that have qualified for every FedEx Cup playoffs?
I think that's right, since it started,
You wonder whether...
He is playing Wyndham.
That's looking unlikely now.
He is playing Wyndham, where he has played well quite often.
Feels like his priorities have shifted to me. With the live thing and all of that, he's at an age and in a position in the game where that's probably taking more of his attention. I mean, these guys at the PGA Tour, they're going to set the future of the game for the next 20 or 30 years with this live stuff. And he's one of those. And I wonder whether he's got the same burning desire week in and week out for golf that he had when he was younger.
Also being based out of Europe, having been in the UK, he would have gone home for a week.
You'd think.
You'd think so. He's played more golf than he normally would.
Look,
so
he'll be looking at some point this streak has to end. Maybe it's this year.
But Jimmy makes a good point because he did the same thing last year. He was looking like he was I think he was in the playoffs, but didn't look like he would progress too far. And then I think he had 2 top 5 finishes the first 2 weeks, and
that's right,
qualified for the Tour Championship. So
gets
he can
hot
come
this
late,
time of year.
Yeah.
And he plays the Open and he gets all up and about golf again.
Yeah. You'd love to see it. I'd love to see him do it and keep the streak going on it. But I just wonder, he's just at a point in life where you've got to wonder all of those competing interests. It's something's going to have to give, and going out and competing against those blokes week in and week out might be the thing you'd go, you know what, that's probably the least enjoyable thing in life at the moment.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Rod, if that's why he wasn't too keen to do media until after it was all finished last week. I think the only interview he did was after the final round.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe he was just, trying to stay clear of those inevitable questions.
Yeah, and wary about that too. I mean, there's not a lot to be gained. There's not a lot of information about it. It's easier to put your foot in it than to not make a mistake. Why would you put yourself up for that?
And as the point was made when Rory stepped out of doing a press conference, an Open and any major is where you get more non-golf media there who all want that clickbait headline. You're going to get more of those questions you've answered before. You're going to get pressed on that sort of stuff, Adam included, given his role on the PAC. So, it kind of makes sense to sit down and do all that.
And media's changed so much too. It used to be fairly simple affair. It was mostly sort of ink scribblers and a few TV or radio people. And
it's a state of the game. What do you think of 17?
That's right. In a press conference that was about golf, but as you rightfully pointed out, the Open's much bigger than that now, and it's not that anymore.
Absolutely. Let's get a winner from everyone. Tony, winner of the 3M Open this year?
Probably going to butcher his name because I only have to write it, normally not say it, but Emiliano Grillo. Grillo.
Yes.
We're cut from the same cloth. I think we do the same research.
Did you go with Grillo as well?
I was going to. I won't, though, because he has, but I think he's got very good. Why did you pick him?
Obviously, he's had a good week at the Open. I think he had a win. I think it's one of those situations where you have a win and there's inevitably a letdown. You've got to kind of get through the emotion of that and the mental toll a week takes, and then the mental toll and physical toll a week of celebration takes. And then you kind of get your head back on and go, okay, I'm playing good golf. Let's play some more. So I think he might have just ended that phase again of the season.
Well, he's also finished tied third, tied second here in the last 3 years with a missed cut in the middle. So he likes the golf course and playing well. That's why I was going to pick him, but I think that's a good pick. But I'm going to go with Michael Kim, who I was just going to send good vibes to.
But being such a good Twitter follower.
Because he's such a great Twitter follower. His stuff over the course of the Open was magnificent. Nice. The best player tweeter I've come across, if you're into golf stuff. He's nothing huge.
Real golf nerdy stuff.
Yeah, he's not particularly, it's not hilarious.
His tweet, were we happy with that?
Did he tweet?
He said his putt around the...
around the 17th, wasn't that?
The Michael Kim one. Look, it's a fair golf
comment. An overrated shot.
Well, he's a golf pro. He'd be in a position to judge. Fair enough to him.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't think that because if I stood there, I'd be... Don't know where it'd go.
If you'd got it on the green from there, we would have called that a great putt. Jimmy, these things are all relative. We're grading on a curve here.
But I like the fact that he made the comment and he put it out there.
And made the case for it too.
That's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily 100% accurate, I don't think. But
it's no slur on Cam Smith. It's just a golf comment. Here's a golf shot that's being played by a golf player. It's not as impressive as some people think for these reasons if you're a touring pro. And the point he made, I didn't read the whole thing in depth, the point he made was there's a field of room out there to the right. There's a lot of room to play with a putter in your hand. For a touring pro, that's not that scary. So,
and he acknowledged the second putt was the impressive part, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think probably he took enough into account the fact of the moment, 71st hole of the Open, and you've got 5,000 people around the green wondering what you're going to do with it. And I think the control to execute that shot is probably more impressive than the shot itself, maybe.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, look, he could have gone out on a limb and said Cam took the coward's way out. He should have
tried to hit a wedge close.
Should have pulled the lob wedge. Didn't Zach Johnson do that in the playoff in 20? An amazing golf shot there. So, Michael Kim, get on this podcast and explain yourself. Webeck wants to know what the hell you're talking about.
I am going to go with Cam Davis here, despite sitting there all week last week.
Well, he's rested.
He's rested. He's a good ball striker. They win here. That's my rank.
It's his kind of tournament, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is not a knock. He's a quintessentially modern PGA Tour player.
Correct. Yeah. He's the guy that used to win the Greater Hartford Open every year. That's that sort of thing.
If you built one, it'd look a bit like him.
Yeah. Finally, we're going to touch on the senior tour, which we do rarely here, but it gets a little bit more attention for the Over 50s Open Championship and probably the golf course that is the standout venue of this week of golf. Martin Slumbers acknowledged last week that the Open itself won't be going to Wales and Royal Porthcawl anytime soon, but that's because of infrastructure, not the golf course. Originally laid out as 18 holes in 1895 by Ramsey Hunter and is without doubt Wales's best golf course, isn't as widely known as the other famous links of the area. Martin Ebert, as he does at every single Open venue, has been in there, done some work. It has hosted a Walker Cup before where Tiger Woods was on the American side, as well as this tournament. And it is on the TV this week in Australia. Watch it, look at the golf course, because it is simply incredible. That's the sort of highlight. Darren Clark won last year at Glen Eagles. Bernhard Langer, of course, one of the headliners. Steve Alker, Kiwi, who has one of the greatest stories in senior tour golf. Thomas Bjorn, one of the guys who now starts playing those, and notably 3 Indians in the field.
It tells you something, doesn't it?
Jyoti Randhawa, Arjun Atwal and Jeev Milkha Singh. Yeah. So very cool for Indian golf that is on the rise. And interestingly, Nota Begay out of the commentary box onto the first tee.
Putting left-hand, right-handed?
I hope so.
That'd be outstanding.
Gosh, I hope so. That was my favourite thing of all time.
You shoot 59 with that bullseye putt, doing left and right-handed?
Yep, you putt the right to left as right-handed, left to right as left-handed. Brilliant.
I'm surprised.
I hope he does. I know he does it based on, I guess, the break of the putt, but I hope he does it based on where the wind's coming from this week. That would be incredible.
It's going to take some time.
Chuck that into your aim point calculations. Are you going left or right-handed on this one as well?
One final time, Tone. I'm going to go back to you about Australians in the field. What do you know about how many Aussies are here?
We've got 8. We've got 8. 8 in the field this week from good representation of the guys that play on the Champions Tour week in, week out, and also guys like Richard Green's on the Champions Tour these days, but guys like Jason Norris, Peter Fowler, and Michael Long, another Kiwi that's
actually
in the field.
Yeah, well, he's been here long enough, I think.
I'm excited for this week because this is a golf course I've actually played, so that's always a thrill when you one of the great junkets was at my Wales golf trip about 20 years ago. So, but yeah, and we've got a few guys that are still in qualifying. Qualifying's still going on at the moment. Andre Stoltz is not too far off, and a guy by the name of Davin Knudsen, who I don't really know, but he was in the mix after round 1 was completed overnight. So
any relation to George?
A couple extras.
Any relation to George? There's a Commonwealth.
You'd have to ask Davin that, Rod.
Be outstanding if there was, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that.
Long bow to draw.
All right.
Anyway.
Let's get a tip from everyone for the Senior Open. Tone, we'll start with you.
Or can I go with my top? Are we doing top Aussies for this as well?
Yeah, you can give us a top Aussie.
So I'm going to throw, because Dave McKenzie, I actually did a bit of research on this one. So Dave McKenzie was 9th here in 2017. So he obviously likes the golf course and he's not playing too bad at the moment. So I'll throw Dave in as my long shot top Aussie.
Not a prolific winner, but what a player has made a living playing this game for the best part of 30 years and done it in just extraordinary fashion of just plodding along where he's the quintessential journeyman, isn't he?
Absolutely. And he probably, a guy like Stephen Alco, who's probably cashed in most of his checks past 50.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Dave's the same, isn't he? Yeah.
So yeah, great to see, him sort of. I guess we've got so many guys here in this country where we know they're good players and maybe opportunities sort of don't go their way to get onto a major tour sort of throughout their careers. So, I mean, Pete Senior is another one of those sort of guys that you think, I know he won in Europe plenty of times, but, the world never saw the best of him. So, so hopefully Dave can have a good week this week. Geez, it's pretty hard to go past Steve Stricker winning any Champions Tour major at the moment. So, I know that's not going to win me a lot of money, but probably can't go past him.
Reasonable tip, I'd say.
Yeah,
right.
Just a quick plug for our other podcast, The Thing About Golf. Actually did an interview with David McKenzie a couple of years ago. Points. Yeah. He was if you're a young golfer looking to make it as a professional, there is some advice in there that is just gold. Absolutely. Maybe not of great interest to the more general public, but if you wanted to pursue a career in professional golf, David McKenzie would be a fantastic guy to follow.
Right, a winner, and give us a top Aussie too. I like that.
Yeah, I do like that. I'm going to go with Richard Green. I really like Richard Green's chances in the European Links golf courses. I had real trouble finding the field here. I'm just going to look, you're right about Stricker, but let's just stay away from absolute gold nugget favourite. Let's go with Darren Clark winning another one because nobody will hoop it up in Wales on Sunday night like Darren Clark if he gets across the line.
That's fair enough. Top Aussie for me, I'm going to take Stuart Appleby because why not?
How's his back?
I don't know.
Real trouble with that a few years ago.
He did, but he'll look good in the Scottish weather with the hair flowing and the visor
he still got the
on.
beard?
No, the beard's kind of trimmed a little bit from last I saw. So
He'll be in the Welsh weather too, so don't get that mistake.
What?
You mentioned the Scottish weather.
Welsh weather. Close. Similar.
He's going to struggle if he's playing it in Scotland.
Yeah, so he's going to struggle. We might go well if it's better weather down there. And my winner is going to be Podrick Harrington.
Okay. That's
because
again,
he genuinely looks like, as close to being a European Ryder Cup pick. So I like the chances of him playing against the older blokes.
Tim and Steve Stricker in over 50s, isn't it, really? The two of them.
Bernhard as well.
Yeah, he's got to be coming to the end.
I mean, he is getting every time he wins, it's a new record for age or whatever. It's like maybe it's time to give it up, Bernhard, because no one else was still doing it.
He's the Adrian Meronk of senior golf. Every time he does something now, he's the first one to have done it. He's the first one to do it.
That's
I feel like he won this event in 2017 too, maybe.
I think so.
If he didn't win that one, he won the 2014 one for sure.
I feel like he threw it away a couple of years ago too, if I'm not mistaken. Made a triple and a double late on the back nine when he just had it in his pocket. I remember it was one of those. Bernhard Langer didn't win from there? Are you kidding me?
Personal experience, long putter in the heavy winds, not easy. So
especially when you're not allowed to anchor it.
That's right. So that's a struggle for Bernhard. Tony, thank you for joining us and giving the so-called experts some actual credibility this week.
Thank you for that, mate. Yes.
We'll find out next Monday how expert they were.
Rod, thanks for doing the opposite.
Hey, listen, I provide the studio. Hey, I've done my bit.
No, but nobody knows that.
No, you can't expect it to have any.
That's a house of cards reason for credibility.
Right. Fair enough.
That is it for episode 24 of Playing from the Tips. Keep up to date on all those events at golfaustralia.com.au and pick up a copy of our August issue with a marvellous feature on Grace Kim, who's been mentioned many times in this podcast. And we will be back next week. Thank you for listening.